Welcome to the Purple Elephant Show. I am your host, KC Phoenix, and this is another episode. I mentioned in the previous episode that I planned on doing 4 episodes today. This is the second one of today that I'm working on now, which, as you know, this particular one will offend some people, sadly, but I'm just a very honest person. And as the title says, conservatives and Republicans should stop complaining about tech companies. And when I say that, I don't mean stop complaining altogether, as in just completely stopping. What I'm saying is that people need to step up a little bit more to create some alternatives to what is currently out there. The reason that these tech companies are around is because they believe they're too big to fail. Whether it be Google, Apple, or not Google, Google Alphabet, the A's, Google Alphabet, YouTube, all same company, whatever they want to call themselves this week, Facebook, Twitter, trying to think of some other ones off the top of my head. Instagram, which is owned by Facebook. The list goes on because people who have a different opinion are constantly being silenced. And more times than not, it's usually on the side of conservatives and Republicans where they're being silenced. And that's where people are finding that this is a huge issue because you can have a different opinion. People shouldn't be silenced just for having a different opinion. That's the one thing that's going on right now with the China Wuhan virus. There are doctors out there who have an alternate opinion. These are medically licensed doctors. And I'm not saying that just because somebody is medically licensed means that their opinion is the accurate opinion, because doctors are wrong all the time. I am saying that they are able to assess things a little bit better, and they have the background and pedigree that helps them ascertain what may be the best way to move forward. Once again, it doesn't mean that they're always going to be right. When it comes to social media, I think conservatives need to learn how to control the narrative a little bit more and push a product. For example, one company that was created was Gab, and Gab is more about free speech. I don't really want to call it conservative. I don't want to call it Republican because I don't look at Gab like that. Gab is more about, hey, if you have an opinion, we're not going to silence you. However, when people take hold of the narrative, when the mainstream grabs the narrative and then builds it to what they want it to be, then people start to look at Gab as more of a fringe social media site when that really isn't the case. And I feel conservatives could step up a little bit more, or even if you're not a conservative, if you're just about free speech, and I need to make that clear. Even though this is more towards conservatives and Republicans, liberals, you would think, would be for free speech as well. But if you're just about free speech, period, you shouldn't be silenced if you're out there bringing forth a competing view. And when you start a platform to bring people over to, that platform shouldn't necessarily be completely demonized unless it's just unending false information on there, like if it was CNN or something like that. That would be different. But if you're a regular social media platform, you have people out there who are putting their opinions out, you need to make sure that your main thing is marketing and PR, controlling the narrative. and I'll say it over again, controlling the narrative, controlling the narrative, controlling the narrative. That is what you want to do, because you do not want other outlets who are against free speech to take control of the narrative and then turn your new platform into what they call a fringe site or a fringe platform. And I know that social media platforms do things behind the scenes, and not necessarily just social media, it's just business in general. The old saying is business, where they do certain things behind the scenes to keep competition from coming in. At the same time, though, it's not impossible. Again, there is no company in the world that is too big to fail. There's no country in the world, if we're really going to get broad with it, including the United States, that is too big to fail. There just isn't. And I'm saying that to say this. There are a lot of companies that we've heard of that were started out of anger, out of being treated unfairly. For example, one of the most famous stories is Netflix. Everybody knows about the Netflix story. And look at Netflix now. I don't know what Netflix's market cap is, but I know it's several billions and billions of dollars, even though they're in debt right now. But Netflix is still worth a lot of money. And they started because of a late fee. It was for the movie Apollo 13. And that's when Blockbuster was around. Blockbuster was huge back in the day. Blockbuster is an example of another company that's not too big to fail. Blockbuster was everywhere. Blockbuster was synonymous with renting movies. But Blockbuster is no longer with us, except maybe in, I think, 2 locations. I think one location is in Alaska and maybe somewhere else. If I'm not mistaken, you can look it up. DuckDuckGo. So, but they fell by the wayside. But the reason Netflix had started was because Blockbuster charged too much for their late fees. And for those of you who don't know, 10 to 13% of Blockbuster's revenue came from late fees. Obviously, if 10 to 13% of your revenue is coming from late fees, there must be a problem. But Blockbuster didn't look at it like that. Blockbuster was looking at it as, oh, well, we're Blockbuster. They have to come rent videos from us. We're too big to fail. Blockbuster is no longer with us. Another company that you've heard of, and this was an interesting story, was Disney. Walt Disney had created a character, and it was the rabbit. It was Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. I'm sitting here looking at my laptop now. Oswald the Lucky Rabbit was originally Walt Disney's first creation, before Mickey Mouse. But then another company, he had pitched Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, and another studio took it. And he became really, really upset about it. And he's like, well, they can have it. And then that's when he created Mickey Mouse. And as you know, the rest is history. Another one for companies that was started out of rage is Virgin Airlines. So Richard Branson, who owns Virgin Airlines, which I didn't know this, he went, they're saying, I'm going to go ahead and read it, but 30 years ago, when American Airlines decided to cancel his flight to the British Virgin Islands, where a beautiful woman was waiting for him, he became incensed. And then Richard Branson said, I went to the back of the airport, hired a plane, borrowed a blackboard and wrote Virgin Air, $39, single flight, he recalls. I walked around all the stranded people and filled up the plane. As we landed, a passenger said to me, Virgin Airways isn't too bad. Smarten up the service and you could be in business. The rest is history. There are many other situations, if you dig for it, where companies were started because people just got fed up. And I want conservatives to focus more on capitalism, which is really more of a conservative Republican principle, instead of complaining. Capitalism versus complaining. I feel that there needs to be more organization. I feel that there needs to be more control of the narrative when these new companies for social media networks are started. I feel there needs to be more support. I feel people should be out there supporting those who are willing to go down in the trenches and do the work. Like in the situation with Gab, which Gab is doing a lot of new things too, which is one reason why I'm mentioning them so much, because they're working so hard to bring an alternative to other social media platforms. So that's what I have to say about that. And as I said before, I'm not saying don't continue to call social media platforms out. Please do continue to call social media platforms out. But instead of it being an 80% calling them out and 20% investing on creating more platforms that embrace free speech, I feel it should be 80% investing in more platforms that embrace free speech and 20% calling them out. I feel it needs to be switched. That is how I'm looking at the situation, because complaining can only do but so much. The lawsuits can only do but so much. The best way to hit a company is by hitting their money. If you can move people off of their platform, they will lose advertising dollars. If they lose advertising dollars, they will either change their ways or they will go out of business. That is one reason why you cannot pay me to click certain links by certain companies. Washington Post. So that's what I want people to focus on, is building up actual networks, actual alternatives, instead of doing mostly complaining about what is currently in place. So that's all I have to say about that. This is another short episode. I just wanted to get that out there. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. ThePurpleElephantShow.com take you directly to the Anchor website. On Twitter, at RealTPES for Twitter. On Instagram, which I use from time to time but don't really pay attention to it. The Purple Elephant Show on Instagram. Again, like, share, subscribe. And yeah, thanks for watching if you watched. Thanks for listening if you listened. And I'm working on another show that is coming shortly.